first. Can you believe that it was just a month ago, that there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump? And that in the 4 weeks since that, we have seen not just the Republicans hold their convention, but also, and this is the important bit, but also that we have seen Joe Biden be heavied out of the re-election race after Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the other Democratic bigwigs threatened to use the 25th Amendment on him to get him out of office. And we also have seen, and here's the crazy bit, Kamala Harris, the ultimate lightweight, be coronated nominee without winning a single primary vote, with now less than 90 days to go to the polls. But here's the important bit, the real key to the entire caper. With all of this sudden change, the Democrats are hoping to get Kamala Harris over the line with this one simple trick. Do as little media as possible. Release as little policy as possible, despite having been the vice president and president in the White House for nearly 4 years, and hope to get through this whole thing on she's not Trump vibes. Well, of course, the question is, will they get away with it? And increasingly, I fear that the answer may be yes, because so much of the American media now looks at their job not as keeping the people informed, but in feeding them the right information to ensure they make the right choices, to protect, quote, our democracy, unquote, which is a little different than democracy. You know, that old thing where everyone chooses their own information and votes for the candidate they like. You see what I mean by this has all sorts of very North Korean vibes about it. But let me give you a few concrete examples. Now, this was the cover of Time magazine when Donald Trump was president. And this is how Time magazine covered Kamala Harris this week in a several thousand-word puff piece in which they did not actually get a word out of the candidate herself. Oh, and how about this? The other day, Kamala Harris blatantly ripped off Donald Trump's policy of no taxes on tips, which would, of course, be a boon to hospitality workers in America who rely on tips to make a living.
And eliminate taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers.
What's a hospitality worker there? Is Kamala Harris changing her accent again to try and appeal to that massive block of New Zealander American voters? Honestly. But there are three things that are wild about this to me. One, again, just to repeat, she totally ripped off Trump there. Two, in 2022, Kamala Harris actually provided the deciding vote in the Senate to give the IRS billions and billions of dollars specifically so they could track workers' tips and tax them more efficiently. This is the way it always works. Yeah, you know, we're going to crack down on billionaires. No, wait, screw that too hard. Let's go after the little guy. And here's the third bit about this. Despite all of these things here, well, you can guess how the media has dealt with this. Here's what CBS said when Trump announced his plan to stop taxing tips. They said it would cost the federal government up to $250 billion over 10 years, according to a independent, nonpartisan watchdog group. Well, yeah, sure. But when the idea came from Kamala Harris, well, then she was rolling out a new policy position and will fight to end taxes on tips for services and hospitality, or should I say hospitality, workers. Notice the different tone there? Now, the only other thing we've heard from policy-wise from Kamala Harris is an idea so insane that it could almost be true, which is that she wants to use the power of the federal bureaucracy to limit rises in the price of food, an idea that has been incredibly successful every time it's been tried anywhere else in the world through history. Yeah, right. Look, as one commentator put it, they're going to girl boss us into bread lines, aren't they? The Kamala Harris campaign, though, is so concerned about the media space that they have been caught out even using Google and paying the service to edit news headlines and descriptions within Google search ads to make it even seem as if The Guardian, Reuters, CBS, and other major publishers are on her side, according to the news site Axios. I mean, it's crazy because they're spending money for stuff that all those outlets will do for free. But this is, as I say, Coles to Newcastle. Why would they bother? Harris, though, is now promising to do a sit-down with someone in the press, though not necessarily an adversarial press conference, like by the end of the month. And I worry that the press now has become so supine about their job, or at least large parts of it have, to the point where they have forgotten not only what their role is, but that their entire reason for being relies on free speech. That Elon Musk and Donald Trump did a sit-down in a space on X the other day, which was heard by hundreds of millions of people. Now, again, you would think this sort of thing, a candidate talking for an hour or two, would be a good thing for our democracy, to let people hear the candidate. But no. Here's a reporter from the Washington Post, the democracy dies in darkness people, the ones who broke Watergate. And by the way, maybe sometime after the election, we can sit down and have a good old chat about what Watergate really was about, but I digress. Listen to this reporter asking what the White House is going to do to stop this outrageous interview.
I think that misinformation on Twitter is not just a campaign issue; it's an America issue. What role does the White House or the president have in sort of stopping that, or stopping the spread of that, or sort of intervening in that? Some of that was about campaign misinformation, but it's a wider thing, right?
Seriously? And here was Karine Jean-Pierre's response.
Yeah, no, and you've heard us talk about this many times from here, about the responsibilities that social media platforms have when it comes to misinformation, disinformation. Don't have anything to read out from here about specific ways that we're working on it, but we believe that they have the responsibility. These are private companies, so we're also mindful of that too. Look, it is. I think it is incredibly important to call that out.
Did you hear that from the White House spokesperson? I can't tell you what we're doing, but we're working on it. All right, look, if it's not North Korean, it's only because there's no gulag yet. But my God. And speaking of which, they're now rolling out the previous dear leader, Joe Biden, I guess to show that he's still vaguely around and maybe kind of sort of running the country, despite reportedly being furious about having been shoved aside in that Pelosi coup.
Our extraordinary President Joe Biden. And he's going to speak in a minute, but there's a lot of love in this room for our president.
Did he get there on, I don't know, the big yellow school bus?
Americans don't like being played for suckers. We believe we should be patient, but there should be reasonable profits, not unreasonable profits.
I tell you what, Kamala Harris, she's almost making me miss this guy.